Hey everybody, it's Charlie at Charlie Slybox, and today we're going to do the, I don't know, third or fourth installment of Bug Talk, and this one is going to be on Pale Morning Duns, or PMDs as they're often called, and this is a summertime bug. This is a bug that typically starts to hatch in June and can kind of range throughout the summer into July, depending on which body of water you're on. They're pretty common here in Colorado. They're pretty common all over the Mountain West, honestly. They are the little yellow mayfly that you see out and about during the summer months. The females have a little bit of yellow in their wings. The males have sort of a grayish wing, but their body is yellow. And they do vary a little bit. It depends on where you're fishing. Sort of famously down on the frying pan, the bugs that hatch out of that basalt rock down there have a little pink cast to them, so that's where the melon quill patterns come from. They've got a little pink tinge to them, or orangish tinge to them. And over in Idaho, I see the same bug that we have here, but it's a little bit more green because it comes out of moss. But generally speaking, they're a pale yellow colored mayfly. Typically size 16 and 18. Occasionally you'll find them a little smaller. Occasionally on big rivers you'll find them a little bigger. One of my favorite things about them is the nymph of that bug is a pretty stout little swimming mayfly nymph. Big gills on it, pretty stout body. A pheasant tail matches it really well. That's one of the flies from back in the day that I still fish for a PMD nymph. And as big as a 14, so a size 14, 16 pheasant tail or flashback pheasant tail, I think we've got one there, is a great little fly to use for a PMD nymph. There's a lot of PMD nymphs out there though, and I'll kind of talk about a few of these as we go through. So the nymph is a fairly big, dark colored olive brown, brownish, I usually say brownish color nymph, a dirty olive brown. And you see a lot of patterns like a split foam back, which I've got one of those here somewhere as well, that have got a little yellow hot spot or like peekaboo spot on them. And where that comes from is the way these bugs hatch. While typically mayfly nymphs will swim to the surface and the adult emerges in the surface film and kind of comes out, and a lot of PMDs will do that. But there are some of them that hatch into full-blown adults underwater. So you end up with a lot of cripples that are the adult yellow form of the bug that's up in the surface film trying to get through. So it's hatched into the adult bug underwater rather than on the surface. And that is something that is different than most mayflies. So that's one of the cool things about PMDs is it's sort of a complex hatch in that there's any variety of different emerger phases that the fish can be eaten at any given time. So you've got some nymphs that are dark brown. You've got some nymphs that have split open. The yellow adult bug is starting to creep out. And that's where you get patterns like my yellow jujubatus, the split foam back, the PMD bar emerger, to be fished under the water, but in the adult color of the bug. And it's because the way many of those bugs emerge, starting to hatch underwater rather than at the surface film. As they get up through the surface film, strangely, usually these bugs are hatching in fairly nice sunny weather. An overcast day is even better, but you get a lot of cripples. They get hung up in the surface film a lot. So I like patterns that sit low and are sort of cripply emerger patterns, kind of half in, half out. A mole fly is a good, a PMD mole fly is always a good bet for any kind of emerging mayfly. A parachute emerger, that's a great fly. It's been around for a long time. Little low floating. Thought I had one here, but maybe I don't. I'd have to put my glasses on to find it, so we'll just put a picture of that one up. But a parachute emerger is probably one of my favorite PMD drives when fish are eating PMDs. A sparkle dun, let's see, what else could you use? There's a bunch of different patterns these days. A sparkle dun and a wani dun, parachute, little extended body. If you get fish that are eating the full-blown adults, that's a great pattern for that as well. Missing link or a found link. Those are both good kind of searching patterns if you're just kind of covering water, a little bit more buoyant than the real delicate stuff. And one of the cool things about PMDs is like I say, they're on most bodies of water that you're going to fish here in the Mountain West. Anything from the Colorado to the South Platte. So tailwaters and freestones. Even Clear Creek's got pretty good PMDs on it during the summer months. And fish will key on them. There's a lot of bugs out there, and they are pretty active for a long period of time. There's actually two different species of mayfly that sort of make up what we call PMDs. And I could get into the details of that, but you don't care. It's a little yellow mayfly. So when you see little yellow mayflies, you want a PMD of some sort. once those bugs get emerged and come out on top, you've got this little yellow mayfly, which will then fly to the bushes and molt into a spinner. And typically those spinners come back and they'll be rusty color. They're not yellow, but the rusty spinners that everybody talks about are typically Pale Morning Dun spinners. So the mature adult version, the imago version of the mayfly, will come back as a rusty color bug, and they're typically a little longer and skinnier, a little shinier. They've got longer tails. So a rusty spinner late in the evening when you're out fishing, right at dark. These days that's 9:30 at night, and you get fish rising to what you can't see. It's typically a flat laying spinner on the water. It's not a midge. Everybody thinks because they can't see the bug that it's got to be some kind of little tiny midge. It's a mayfly spinner that's laying flat on the water. So that being said, I'm going to kind of go backwards now and talk about some different things to fish when things like that are happening and the differences with these PMDs. When the rusty spinners are coming down, when there's a spinner fall, fishing that spinner dry, if you've got a fish that's rising consistently, where you can see him, fishing that spinner dry is the way to go. Another thing to do is to put on a little bit bigger dry, maybe a parachute PMD, something like that that's easier to see, and sink that spinner just an inch. Don't put any weight on it, just don't put any floating on it either, so it'll sink just an inch under the surface. A lot of those spinners get eaten under the water, an amazing amount of them. It almost is cheating to fish with a sunken spinner. It's not near as much fun as dry fly fishing, but if you got to put some fish in the net and you just got to get your fix for the day, that's a good way to go about it. Another fly that I like to fish for a PMD when they're hatching is my soft tackle emerger, which is an old pattern that I originally came up with sort of as an RS2 variation or alternative, and I tied the PMD version, and it is, when you look at it, kind of like an old wet fly. It's got adult-sized wings. It's got a long tail, and it's got a little soft tackle on there with a yellow body. This is a good fly to fish just damp, just sunk an inch under the surface. A lot of times during the summer on freestones, I'll fish this behind a hopper. Again, just with no floating, just let it kind of wallow around in the surface film there. And it's amazing how often that gets eaten. It could be a cripple, it could be a half-emerged adult that didn't get all the way out. It can be a lot of things. So one of the cool things about PMDs is you can kind of look at that hatch a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different variations on the theme that will work, and it doesn't have to be just nymphs. If I was setting up a box of PMDs to take out, I would definitely have, like I say, the pheasant tail or flashback pheasant tail, bar merger, PMD jujubatus, and a yellow jujubatus. So the PMD jujubatus is kind of a brown and orange, kind of rusty brown colored body with a dark thorax, and the yellow jujubatus has got a yellow thorax with a brown and yellow body, so a lot more yellow on it. And if you kind of think that through, that's just a little further along in that emergence stage. Sometimes it's just something that sticks out a little bit as well. I would also throw some of the soft tackle emergers in there. At the top of my list for dry flies would be the parachute emerger and that PMD mole fly. And honestly, you can tie the mole fly with a little yellow thorax and make that the PMD version, or you could just tie a slightly bigger mole fly in the traditional kind of brownish olive color. That works just fine as well. And again, just think about how that that bug starts to emerge out of that brown nymphal shuck. Sometimes they're out where there's enough yellow showing. Sometimes they're not out far enough where there's yellow showing. So either one of those are something that the fish are used to seeing. But PMDs, like I say summertime to me. That's a great hatch, a great fun bug to fish. It's yellow, so it's easy to see. The hatch becomes pretty consistent through the summer months. So if you're out one day and you see a hatch, you'll probably see it again the next day. And they're just starting now. They like about 58 to 60 degree water temp, which we're kind of just coming down to with runoff ending now. But that'll continue on for the next several weeks. They're pretty long-lived hatch. There's a lot of these bugs out there. I do notice that they seem to get smaller as the season goes on. So you've got maybe full biggish size 16, so maybe a 15 size for the first ones that hatch, and then toward the end of the season they might be down to an 18. But typically right around that 16 range. Although I would say that I have better luck with fishing a size 18 dry. It just kind of scales it down a little bit. And that's what I would do with the PMDs. Like I say, that's a bug that confuses a lot of people. It's not a yellow baetis, it's a yellow mayfly. But it is a different kind of bug. And there's lots of them out there, and you should go fish with them because they're fun and they're pretty and they taste like lemons. Thanks for watching.